Sheriff's Department, Wartburg Police Department, Fire Departments, Roane County Sheriff's Office, the Morgan County Prison with their dog teams from there, Roane County's dog teams, K9 teams, I should say properly, and I know Sheriff would want that said, and he's the one that's really in charge of this. He's just asked me to kick this off and kind of MC it and talk about it, but I really like that story and the idea of the dedication of this man here and what it brought us to this point today where we're this close to having this mystery solved. And with that, I want you to further expand on that and tell them about that, Sheriff.
Yeah, just like the General said, I've got to know this family personally. They're a great group of people. Just as soon as I got elected, I went up and I met the wife, met the mom and the dad. These people are really super good people. A couple of weeks ago, I was up there with Keith Hawkins. We was having some dinner, and Ruben, the father, had mentioned something to me that we had never heard before. We looked through a case file. It was not in there. He had talked to an individual that lived up the road here a few hollows, and had basically told him that he had seen some headlights over there the night that this took place, that Kevin had taken message. Keith and I went up there immediately, found the man, talked to him, interviewed him. He said, yeah, I'd seen side-by-side headlights over here, a few ridges over. I GPSed the coordinates there in his backyard that night. We came back to the office. We pulled out the triangular that Brad and the TBI had done back in 2017, and we were just outside that box. So immediately I reached out to Neil Noel with the rescue squad. He came up a few days later. We had a meeting. We reached out to Brad. We sat down. We had a conference call, and we asked them to come back up and just fly just outside of that triangular just a little bit more, because I think when they were here in 2017, the information that they had at the time and everything kind of led east of the house. This was a little bit west of the house. So when he came back, Brad came back on Monday and flew and immediately located the side-by-side. One of the most important things that I want to go back to is I want y'all to keep this family in your thoughts, in their prayers. This family's went through a whole lot over the last 3.5 years. We're really close to finding closure, and there's a lot of speculation out there. There's a lot of what I call Facebook investigators. The truth's going to come out if we follow the facts, and that's where we need to stay at, is on target and follow the facts.
If you want to come up and talk about the role that the Tennessee Highway Patrol plays, we're not just about out there on the side of the interstate writing tickets. You do so much more. And talk about this crew here today.
Well, basically, we're just here to support the general, of course, the ongoing investigation by the Sheriff's Department, and just hope to find closure for this family. So that's basically our role in that. Yes, we do more than just write tickets and investigate crashes. We have an array of things that we do around the state. So this is just one of those things. So Lynn wants to talk more about the actual operation today. Then
sure, I know a couple of the reporters went up there and saw they had 2 helicopters in operation. Took a lot of planning to do this and do it safely and do it well, especially given the terrain, the slope, the trees in the way. We also, let me mention, we have the Forest Service, our UT Forestry Department involved, and we may talk about that later on in the segment. But first, I want Lieutenant Brad Lund to talk about how they prepared for this, how he approached the site, and what happened with getting the razor out, and where we can go from there.
I'm Brad Lund with the Tennessee Highway Patrol Aviation Section. We flew up Monday and located the UTV, as mentioned earlier, and took some pictures of it, walked the crew into it, and kind of evaluated the situation and whether we'd be able to extract it by air. It's in a pretty difficult situation, so a ground extraction of it and recovery would probably take quite a bit of work to do. So we were able to fly up today with the crew, rescue crew that we use. We flew out of Nashville in our UH-1 helicopter, and we hoisted 2 members of our rescue crew down with some rigging equipment, and they rigged the razor for extraction. We came back in, lowered a rope that we use for the cargo hook of our helicopters, attached to it, lifted it out, and to the landing area that had already been established by the Sheriff's Department, and set the razor back down and we loaded up.
questions about that park specifically before we move on to a different area?
What about that terrain? It's on a steep hill, but for those who weren't able to see, or maybe they're not familiar with Morgan County, how I guess difficult was that spot for both you guys as well as the investigators to get to?
Well, it is pretty difficult because probably the nearest road is about 300 yards from it. It's very steep, sloping terrain going down. There's a lot of tree laps from logging operations that have taken place. There's no way to really drive a vehicle down there to it. There's a lot of large boulders, things like that that would prevent or to inhibit a ground operation. So that was a primary reason that we used our air assets to lift it out.
Thank you. One of the things I want to mention, we've talked about, and Chief can confirm this, Sheriff, too, any individual in jail in Morgan County, it seems like Jonathan, my assistant DA, and several of us have talked about this, throughout the process, even before Sheriff Potter became sheriff during the previous administration. Hey, I have some information on where Kevin Hamby is. I know who may have killed him or shot him or done this. So all kinds of, like I mentioned earlier, rabbit holes that investigators have had to go down to run that information to the ground, and just some stories that if we have more time, I believe the lengths that the sheriff has gone to, time and money has put into this. But the conspiracy theories abound. As mentioned, the Facebook investigators, as far as well, that gator doesn't look like it's been, not gator, excuse me, razor doesn't look like it's been there that long. It looks too new. Well, it was brand new about when he went in there with it, and we've looked at it up close, and there's some things that we'll let Keith Hawkins talk about that shows why it's been there a long time, but may not look like it. As we got it, thanks to THP, got it out of there, got it where they could put it in a location to get it on a rollback. I know several of you took footage of the undercarriage, the leaves, the dirt, the debris, the underside of the top of the razor where mold was actually growing on it. And then when Jonathan Edwards mentioned that there's an impact mark on this tree that it hit that's now about 6 inches above where it originally was, I got in touch with UT Forestry. They put me in touch with Martin Schubert and Chad West, who were out here today, came to the tree, looked at it, identified it as a red maple, talked about the mark on the tree, went out, and they actually cut the top of the tree out so THP could get to it, and then they cut that section out where the impact mark is and where the razor is now, and they're going to go back and try to into chronology, have it using microscopes and whatnot, with the rings, as you can imagine, whatnot, determine best they can how long it's been there, so we can say, yeah, this is truly within a 3 to 4 year range. Maybe it's not, different issues. But Keith, real quick, tell them, if you will, about why you think the razor, what I've said, add to it,
Well, the first clue we found was there's giant boulders coming off the cliff where we found the side to side. You can clearly see impact marks in the boulders. The chips have been taken out of these boulders, and lightning has actually started to go back over the chip. It actually showed where the side to side had come down the mountain, big rocks, really rocks up, and rocks are showed that lightning and vegetation. There was also a couple of trees that had been knocked over that appear to have been dead. Like the general said, the scar on the trees has already grown back over where the side by sides of the trees. It's grown back over, so it leads us to believe that the wreck has happened, years ago. And the side by side had up to 3 inches of leaves and debris inside of it. It's over this right now.
Any questions about that aspect? Okay, thank you, Pete. And then, like I say, I've not been directly part of the search, so I'm just repeating information that's been provided with me to help assist with the press conference. But initially, the razor was found on Monday, late Monday afternoon, and then you brought in some folks from Roane County Sheriff's Department, and they searched all day yesterday. Other people tell about the search, what items you found first, and leading up to what all happened yesterday. Sure.
Going back to the original story I was telling you a few minutes ago, once Brad reached out to Neil Knoll on Monday and said we've located the razor, Neil immediately contacted me. I came back to the Sheriff's Department, formed a team. We went up there and made contact with the razor. We located a shoe within 10 yards of the razor. Inside the shoe was moss was already starting to grow and formed inside the shoe. We started losing daylight quickly, so I left an officer on the scene. I went back and spoke with the family and kind of notified them. We positively identified that this was Kevin's razor. The next morning, General Johnson was super. He was able to get the TBI up there relatively quickly, along with Roane County's K9 unit that helps look for deceased body parts. And we started doing a grid search at that point in time. And we searched an area throughout the day yesterday. I think some of the guys said they walked upwards of 12 miles. So we was going down hollers, coming back up hollers, etc. Late yesterday evening, right about dark, one of the canines indicated on a pair of blue jeans that was pretty much buried in about 4 inches of leaves. And with the blue jeans was a gray shirt. Both of them was pretty much destroyed, as far as decayed and so forth. I reached out to the family, asked the shirt size, asked the pant size. They were able to give them to me real quick. We were able to compare them, that matched the description of the size, matched the clothing that he was wearing that night he left. Dark hit us pretty quick, so one of our officers was coming out late last night on another ridge and located what we would consider the first part of the human remains, which was the skull. Everything was tagged, put in the evidence room at that point in time, and this morning we went back, started out again this morning at 7:30, same group of people. They brought in more dogs from Alcoa and different locations. I think Johnson City has about 3 or 4 dogs here. So today they located one of the 45 Uberti pistols that Kevin had on him when he left the residence that night. They also located a pocket knife that the father was able to identify as he had purchased from Kevin the days before he took medicine. And they also located the gray hoodie that he was wearing the night that he left. Those items were located today. And keep in mind, this is a very steep terrain. It's a large area, and they're doing the best they can at searching. No more bones at this time has been located, but these dog teams are still there currently as we speak, and they're continuing to search. I've been in contact with, like I said, Chief Neil Knoll with the rescue squad. They're calling for heavy rains tomorrow, so we're planning on Saturday bringing in what they call a CERT team, which is numerous people that's trained in searching for body parts and things like that. So Saturday morning we're going to meet again on the mountain, and we're going to search throughout the day Saturday to see if we can't recover anything else.
Okay, and some of you were here when we talked on the phone, and we've been in touch with Dr. Murray Marks, who is the professor. He's actually a professor of dentistry. He's associated with UT Hospital, who helps in these forensic searches, especially human remains that have been out in the open for a long period of time. We had shown him photos of the skull. We've got several different angles and whatnot. He was able to, just from a photo, to identify it as being that of a male. And then we talked about what the possibilities are for identification if that's the only human remains that we find. The mandible jaw is not there, not present on the skull. There are no teeth. Obviously, if the jaw is missing, but there are no teeth in the upper part either. So dental records will not help us in this case. We are pretty sure that there is no x-ray of his skull while he was alive, so they cannot do a comparison with this x-ray of the skull and any existing one. He did have medical issues. They were well known, but they are all related to his hip and that area. He did have serious problems and injuries down there. But anyway, so we went into the discussion about DNA. The sheriff's office at some time ago had sent a toothbrush belonging to Kevin Hamby to a lab in Texas, as well as DNA collected from his parents. So those DNA profiles are already on file at this lab in Texas that those agencies up here use for forensic analysis. So the skull will be transported to the Regional Forensic Center. They will take a portion of that and send it to Texas for DNA comparison analysis. And we're hopeful that that gives us the result that we think we're going to get. back to the skull and the photos. Earlier I posted one on our Facebook page that was picked up by some of the other media, and it was a picture of the skull fully intact from behind. The purpose of that is to be transparent and to try to, for the family's sake, tamp down some of this conspiracy chatter that he was shot in the back of the head, that he was beat to death, and skull cracked and all that. And so this picture clearly displays that. It was shown to the family before it was posted, and it's and you mentioned it, and I keep harping on it. In today's era of what we do with law enforcement's always being second guessed. There's always a group of people trolling or conspiracy theorists, whatever, trying to hinder what they're doing. And we're going overboard to tell you about step by step everything we've done through this process, everything we've found, and maybe too much trying to counter some of the feedback that's coming towards law enforcement in this case. But I can't compliment all the people involved enough. The sheriff, like I said, he's the #1 person out here taking the lead. He's the general that's made this search happen and make it go so successfully. As far as success, in that it's tragic what we found. It's imagine what the family has gone through and what they think. So it's some small way. It brings them closure, but I know we won't have that complete closure until we get a positive identification, hopefully from DNA. Keep in mind too, as a caveat, at least twice a year we have somebody up here that says, hey, I found human remains, somebody's murdered somebody up here. We're not as close to the South Fork area right here as we are in other places, but we call Dr. Murray Marks sending remains undocumented death. I don't know if that's the case it is, or if it's someone else's power. Everything, every clue points that direction, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else to add?
I just want to elaborate. There again, keep this family in your thoughts and prayers. They've went through a whole lot over the last 3.5 years. Also, my department has done an excellent job on this, along with Russell Johnson and his department. I can't ask for anything better. When we came in here 2.5 years ago, we had several missing persons things, cases that we were working on. This is the second one that my department solved in the last 1.5 years. We're doing our best. Like I said, with the help of people like this, we're going to continue to take on other challenges. We got another missing person in Oakdale that we're going to start working on immediately. I just want to say thank you to this community, to Russell Johnson, and to my department and everyone that's been a part of this.
Anybody else want to say anything, Chief? Appreciate you, Chief. Lon? Any questions for the sheriff or anybody?
I would like to, real quick, Sheriff, you had mentioned, and so had the general, having, I guess, monthly meetings with the family to try to see if there's any sort of stone that was unturned. How big of an impact, I guess, do you think, does it have a little extra meaning, knowing that you have gotten a little bit closer to this family? Does it kind of urge you on a little bit?
I know the general had spoken about monthly meetings. Some months we were there a couple of times a month. I got really close to this family. These people are like family to me. And when you live in a small town and you know everyone, you get close to them. So getting to know Mr. and Miss Hamby and Connie has been a blessing. But it affects you personally, because I go home at night, and if I get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning, hey, I know something about this case, I get up and go. That's what's different about me. And I have lived and died this for the last 2.5 years. And when I got this call from Brad and them on Monday, I was absolutely ecstatic. I sat up there at the Hamby family's residence last night and broke down. I had to walk outside. That's how close that I'm attached to this family. And like I said, these people don't deserve what they're having to go through on Facebook. This is, in my opinion, has been a tragic accident. And I think if we follow the facts, it's going to lead us to that.
About how long will the DNA comparison take once the piece of that skull is sent to Texas?
Just formally, we had this situation in the same area. We located the skull, we sent it off. It took almost a year to get the results back.
So based on what I know we can't identify the skull as Kevin's at this time, but based on the belongings of his that have been found, are you able to make an assumption at this time whether it was foul play or an accident?
There's no way to determine. I could say this, and I think General Johnson can agree with me. The skull is completely intact. There's no indications of any type of foul play with the skull, with them, which that's the only human remains that we found at this time, which leads me to believe that this was a tragic accident. So there's no other indication that there's been any type of foul play, and we wouldn't know that unless we can recover more bones and more parts of the body. Would you not agree with that?
Absolutely. I know we talked about it a little bit. Anything else to add?
I would personally say that to me, all indications of tragic accident. I believe Mr. Hamby was familiar with the area, and I believe he actually had rode the area, grew up in the area up there. I don't see any indications of any foul play, and any indication of foul play we've encountered in this investigation, we've completely ran down. I mean, we have ran leads into the dirt. This investigation still was conditioning to the information, so we've been at it pretty hard. I've never seen any indication of foul play, especially when we get up there and see what we see up there. It looks like a tragic accident.
Just by virtue of every tip, every lead, every conspiracy theory they found, they've done everything to exhaust any possibility of that being true. So they've eliminated all of those. If you just to really don't understand it from the pictures and even from video until you get up there, how hard it is to get up there and then to get out to where the razor was located. I observed, I think while we were out there watching the helicopter lifted up, the only way we've gotten in here was by a helicopter almost. But, folks that do that on a regular basis, the whole Morgan County community, probably more razors up here than cars, almost. And so it's an everyday thing, and it was certainly, I understand, the main thing he liked doing. He was able to purchase that new razor and get out and get around because he couldn't get his mobility, his ambulation was limited due to his injuries. And so, that was what he did. And there again, he gets out there, he tips it over, has a wreck, it's late at night, it's dark. He's not going to be able to navigate that terrain even as well as I can, from my understanding. He's a bigger guy that has a titanium rod in his hip, I guess, and had multiple surgeries on his hip. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm looking at, we've put a map up that shows with GPS coordinates where the razor was found. Downstream or downslope from that, there's some sort of, and I think we have a picture of it, of a small waterfall. That was where they located the gun in about 8 inches of water at the bottom of the waterfall, and his pocket knife near there, and the clothes we talked about were all found near there. And then the assumption is, he probably stumbled, made it downhill, don't know how injured he was, and goes over that waterfall, falls in, whatever, and then he's in the elements, middle of November at night, water, cold stream, whatever happens at that point as far as how far maybe he gets washed down, just pure speculation. I'm just repeating what we talked about as an operating theory, really, and then the skull's found in a different location. Not to get into some of the talk on Facebook about what happens in the wild, with somebody and all, you can just imagine, people know well enough what could have happened there, especially after 3.5 years, and the fact we only have a skull and don't have remains at this point. That's a fair enough explanation?
Absolutely.
Anybody that has any more intelligence about it or better understanding?
Does any of y'all have any more questions?
I do have one last one. You talked about posting the picture of the skull for transparency purposes and kind of debunking some conspiracy theories. Has it been taken down since then?
Yes, we took it down because, not comments on our site, there was another local newspaper that put it up, and the sheriff let me know, hey, that we're getting a lot of negative comments and people saying that's insensitive. But I will just restate, all the pictures were shown to the family beforehand, cleared with the family, and like I say, it was an effort to say, look, this is an intact skull, there's no bullet hole here, there's no trauma, let's shut up on the conspiracy theory.
And I just want to add, I completely understand why General Johnson put that out there, but I also understand the flip side of that, being a local small-time sheriff. I mean, this is someone's child, this is someone's father. So you're in a no-win situation. But law enforcement, as he spoke earlier, we're constantly getting hammered for every mistake that we make. This was from Monday. I mean, actually from 2.5 years ago, this case has been a priority case, and we have done everything that we could to get to where we are today. And it's bittersweet for this family because they have answers now. They still don't have that loved one. And when you're in a small town, it hurts here. I mean, it's heartbreaking. You take it home with you. Each one of my officers takes this home with them every night. And this is very emotional for all of us, and especially that family. So that's why I keep reiterating, please keep their thoughts in your prayers.
Thank you all for being here.